Hello, Mandy. Mandy Thomas. Welcome. Hello, Jermaine. Hello. Yes, of course. Of course we know who you are.
Firstly, I'm an artist and I do painting, so I thought I would donate a copy of a painting for the charity. Okay, I would like to thank Pamela, Karen and everyone at the No More Foundation and the Centre for Public Impact for inviting me to stand before you today. The importance of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women is unfeigned. Your voice, my voice, the voices of all survivors are the most powerful tools we have. They are what turn silence into movement, pain into purpose, and survival into change. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Mandy Thomas. I am a mother, a survivor, an author, and a relentless advocate for justice. I have lived with domestic violence for most of my life. My father died when I was 9, and my mother remarried a paedophile, so abuse of all kinds began, and this is where insomnia set in. At 16, I could legally escape, so I did. At 18, I met a man who promised love and protection. Instead, he delivered 18 years of sexual abuse, violence, tortures, sleep deprivation, imprisonment, coercive and financial control. He played intense mind games for nearly 2 decades. I was terrorized in my own home. The system knew and it failed us over and over. Each time he was arrested, he walked free. Each time I fled, he found me. And each time he got away with the dreadful crimes, he reveled in this power, and his tortures became sadistic, and he found it amusing. The final attack lasted for 4 days. It started off with him smashing a glass in my face for no reason, and then slapping me. He then stripped me and pushed me onto the bed, jumped on me and punched me for hours. He ripped the hair out of my head and got a pair of scissors to chop it off into chunks. He then ran off downstairs. He was sharpening knives and talking to himself to make sure I knew what he was doing. He came up and swung at me left to right, aiming for my face. Then he ran off in a crazed anger. I heard him go outside to the shed. He found a blowtorch. He tested it and came back with it on a full blue flame of fire. He was burning things to show me its power. Smoke alarms were going off. When he burnt my arm, he said, "Smell that burning flesh." He burnt the pillows and the bedding and kept aiming at my lower body. He kept me imprisoned in that room for 4 days. He starved me and raped me every way imaginable over and over. I would go in and out of consciousness, and he would slap me to bring me round. I could hardly see because my eyes were swollen and my ears were bleeding inside. Everything was a muffled haze. I was not allowed to wash until the 4th day. I sat curled up in the bath with the shower on, with chunks of skin, hair and blood blocking the plug hole, and the bath filled up with blood. I was numb. It was a cold numb. I couldn't move. And then I heard a tapping on the window. There was a policeman on a ladder asking if I was okay and could I let him in. My ex had gone out while I was in the shower. He was arrested. It was July 2002. He pleaded not guilty because he had wiped his previous police records clean and my hospital and doctor's records clean. He dragged us all through the courts for a year, and he was convinced that he would walk. He had no idea, however, of the paper box files that were saved at various hospitals in places that I'd lived, which were used in court. Kafkas were heavily involved also, and my children had to do video-linked interviews. He was sentenced on the 3rd of the 3rd of the 3rd, and my lucky number being 3. The judge was female, and she said, "You are devious, evil, and calculated," and he was sentenced to 15 years, 9 for GBH with intent and false imprisonment, and 6 years for the multiple rapes. We moved, I created a happy home and gave my children freedom. I remember that first slow walk outside after he was sentenced. It was like I was given this gift. I could breathe the air and not be in fear of going home. And the tears just rolled out of me. It all felt so alien. We had nearly 6 happy years without him. Watching my children grow and becoming truly exceptional individuals was a blessing and a joy, but our happy bubble was about to burst. In 2008, I was told they were early releasing him, even though he had been breaching terms and attacked a guard in the prison. He also sent me death threats by phone, post, and email. I was then told I had 2 weeks to move myself and my 5 children again, our happy home gone. We were then in a new town, another house, surrounded by police and social services, telling us we couldn't go on the internet, we couldn't have phones, and we couldn't speak to our friends or family, anybody that we'd left behind. It was rules upon rules. We lost our freedom so that he could have his. How is this ever right? And I don't think that's justice. This bit's really hard for me. Daniel, my eldest, went missing 2 weeks after they released my ex from prison. I had to pull strength from such a deep place to get us all through this forced nightmare. We searched for Daniel, and then a month later, his body was found. I was told this very clinically. The room was spinning and my heart was racing. It all felt like I'd been sucked into a vortex of hellish pain. How can I tell my babies this? How? I must be strong for my children, but this is asking the impossible of me. I can't put into words the heartbreak, confusion, and anger, and the tug in my heart of losing Daniel. And then we were told we'd have to move yet again to a proper safe house with extra locks and an escape room. I had no reserves, I just went into robotic mode, and then a month later, Daniel's body was released to me for burial. And no words can convey the depth of this agony. It felt like I was in my worst nightmare, inwardly screaming so loud for it not to be real. The cost of this lack of justice has left an open wound in all of us. So we moved again, but this house now holds tears and grief. My ex is a grade A criminal and he walks free. I don't know where he lives, but I'm sure he knows where we live because he's a computer hacker. How do his rights outweigh ours? That's not justice. That is cruelty wrapped in bureaucracy. And this is not just my story. It is the story of thousands of women who are unheard and unprotected. When we talk about domestic violence, we often speak in statistics, but I'm very real. Every 1 in 3 represents a human being, a woman screaming behind closed doors, a child trembling in the dark, a family shattered by fear and silence. We live in a world that still accepts violence as inevitable, and it punishes survivors for surviving. And my words may sound raw to you, but they're my truth, and my truth isn't pretty. Domestic abuse is not a single act, it is a war waged in the home. And yet I stand here today. He did not destroy my voice. I speak not just for myself, but for every woman silenced by fear, every child failed by the system, and every life lost because we're not believed. And I won't sugarcoat it. The strength it has taken me to write these words and show up here today is immense. Triggers are very real, and fight or flight is a constant part of my life. Our justice system does not deliver justice for victims of domestic and sexual violence. Too often perpetrators are released early. Services that should save lives are chronically underfunded. Rape centres running on the bare minimum. Refuges turning people away. Police officers lack the training or the time to truly understand the dangers we face. But change is possible. We have spent years lobbying for new laws for the criminalisation of strangulation and coercive control, because I know what it means to have your breath stolen and your freedom denied. These laws exist now, but they're meaningless without enforcement, funding, and understanding. It is not enough just to pass a law. We must train the police to recognise abuse. We must educate our children about respect, empathy, and consent. We must ensure survivors have access to counselling, translators, housing, and justice that does not re-traumatise. And we must end the culture that tells women it was their fault for staying. I still get asked that, even by people who have read my book, and I just say it's called You Can't Run for a reason. When a woman is forced to hand her children over to an abuser, this is mind-blowing to me because it just doesn't make sense. I know this matter now is being looked into after much lobbying. We need family courts that protect the vulnerable. We need sentencing that fits the crime. No more early releasing for violent offenders. We need governments that place human safety above profit, war, and political posturing. When I first began raising awareness with Women's Aid, it was said that there was 1 in 4 who would experience domestic violence, and now it is 1 in 3. But I believe the real number is closer to 1 in 2 because so many women cannot speak out. We have to break that silence. We have to stop the stigma, and we have to make it safe and easy to report. We must build a system that does not depend on survivors to beg for dignity. I am an artist and I am an author, and these are my forms of expression and healing alongside music. I tell my story not for pity, but to show you that no matter how deep the darkness, there is always a way to rise. I believe in the power of community and watching out for each other. This is the era of communication, and yet we have forgotten how to truly listen. So let us listen now to the cries that go unheard, to the survivors still living in fear, to the children growing up believing that abuse is normal. Let us be the generation that turns empathy into action. I have sat across from ministers, police chiefs, and politicians over the years, and I've watched promises fade. But I stand here today because I believe that change is possible. But change demands courage. It demands accountability. It demands that we value women and children's lives. And domestic violence costs our government over 98 billion a year in the aftermath. Imagine what we could save in money if we invested in the prevention. We must not be content with awareness. We must demand action, because awareness without change is just another form of apathy. We are not gathered here today merely to remember what has been endured, but to ensure that enduring it will no longer be necessary. And this isn't just a woman's, child's, cultural, or even government issue. It is a global human issue. To every survivor listening, you are not weak. It is not your fault. You are not broken. You are living proof of resilience. And to every policymaker, judge, officer, and leader, we are speaking out, and we will not stop until justice prevails. We may not have fought a war for our country, but we have fought for freedom and survival, and some of us have lost that battle. So today, let our voices unite, not in mourning, but in movement, because together we can and we will be the change that is long overdue. And if you're watching, Daniel, I love you always. And I will never stop fighting for the world you deserve to live in. Thank you.
Mandy, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone. We thank you for sharing and having the courage to share your story. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. And we know there's so much more work to do. So thank you for reminding of us. And thank you for your wonderful son to share the stage with you.
Thank you,
Mandy
everybody.
Thomas and Jermaine, everyone. Thank you.